Thank you, Amin. So is this working for me? Okay, excellent. And it's a great pleasure. I was saying to Amin earlier, actually, that this is quite the reunion for me. Andrew, good to see you again. I spent a little while as a Bezos Earth Fellow. I did 3 degrees here at Columbia, my undergrad, my MBA, and my PhD. I'm a historian by training, so my PhD is in American history. I still teach. I taught my class last night at CEPA. And so I'm really just waiting for my kindergarten teacher to show up to have this be a full reunion. I even see Anthony Townsend out here, who was a colleague at both Cornell Tech and Sidewalk Labs. And so I'm really excited to talk about this, and I'm really grateful that the Bezos Earth Fund and the Columbia Climate School are teaming up on this topic. And there is so much that I'm sure you are working on, and I have to confess I didn't read all 100 pages of the report, so I apologize. But there is a ton, obviously, that I think AI can deliver in terms of the modeling, in terms of understanding how our climate is changing and what that will mean for nature. And we will hear later from people like Dean Shaman, who knows far more about what those needs are than I do. So what I thought I'd talk about, though, is, as it says on the screen, a practitioner's perspective. Because I'm not going to have anything to offer this room in terms of the research on basic climate. But I have spent most of my career actually trying to change and solve this problem through solutions, particularly at the urban level. And given my time at Sidewalk, I spent a lot of time really trying to think about how we could leverage technology in pursuit of those solutions. And so that's what I want to talk about, which is what are the needs in that area? And I want to start out with a little story, one that, unfortunately, I got to tell you, the punchline is not going to make you all laugh too much. But it's a story that I often think about. And I actually spent a lot of time at Sidewalk Labs thinking about it in the context of urban tech. And the story goes that a gentleman is walking home one night after dark, nearing his home. His neighborhood is not particularly wisely lit. It's got street lights, but he walks through light, dark, as he proceeds down the sidewalk. And as he gets near his home, he comes across somebody on his hands and knees looking at the ground. He recognizes this person. He doesn't know him well, but he knows he's a neighbor. And so he says, "What's going on? What are you doing?" And he says, "I dropped my keys." And I said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. Have you found them?" He says, "No, I've been looking for them for half an hour, and I can't find my keys." He's getting very agitated. So the guy is worried. He says, "Okay, I'll help you." He gets down on his hands and knees next to the guy, right underneath the lamppost. It's very bright. He's like, "I don't see any keys anywhere." And he says, "Okay, so where should we look?" He says, "Well, look around here." And he says, "Okay, is this where you dropped your keys?" And the other guy says, No, it's not." The other guy pauses. He says, "You've been looking here for half an hour. This is not where you dropped your keys." He says, "No." He says, "Well, where did you drop your keys?" He points over into the darkness. He says, "Over there." He says, "Well, why are you looking for the keys here if you dropped them over there?" He says, "Because it's dark over there. I'll never find them." And I've thought about that story a lot in the context of urban technology. Because I think one of the challenges and one of the gaps of the last, call it quarter century, the first quarter century of this century, that we've done with technology is we've done a lot of looking for our keys under the lamppost, even though we know deep down that is not where the problem lies. As we know, what has been revealed by the technology changes of the last 25 years, the advent of the smartphone, ubiquitous photography, global positioning, the ability to crunch big data, tells us a great deal. It fills in a remarkable number of gaps of data and analysis and knowledge. And that has been amazing. And of course, the world of climate science has dramatically advanced. The world of monitoring of all sorts of things has dramatically advanced. The ability to match people with things they need, whether that's a car or a hamburger or whatever, right, has been greatly advanced through digital technology. But the problem is most of those have been, and taking a line from what Amin quoted Andrew on, have been a little bit supply side. Because that has been using technology to address the problems that technology can solve most easily. And if you are trying to get a research project completed, or if you are trying to start a company based on venture capital, you have to do that. You have to go where the light is. But we only have to look around at our cities in 2024, and we can say pretty clearly that urban technology has made a big impact, but it has far from solved the problems that we face in our cities at the intersection of climate and urban life. We have lots of ways to get food delivered. We have new ways to navigate the city and avoid traffic. We have ways to hail a car or find an apartment or rent a bike. And all of that is great, and bike sharing, of course, is particularly great. But it really does call to mind Peter Thiel's comment about we wanted flying cars and we got 140 characters. The reality is that urban congestion is worse than it was before Uber and Waze. Zillow and StreetEasy have revolutionized apartment hunting, but have done nothing to address the housing crisis itself. Body cameras and CompStat helped address crime and create a bit more police accountability, but have hardly solved either. And so the reason that I was excited to be invited to talk to you today is to implore you all, on the funders' side, on the researchers' side, on the technologists' side, to focus on applications for AI relentlessly on the problems that need to be solved, not the ones that are easiest for AI to solve. What are those problems? And again, I'll focus on the things I know best. Infrastructure takes too long to build, and it is breathtakingly expensive. My agency is charged, among other things, with both stormwater and coastal resilience, and I am scared to death at what it will mean for the economics of New York City, let alone the fact that I don't know how we could possibly create the institutional infrastructure we'd need to deliver the volume of work in the time frame that we have to deliver it in. I don't know how we do that. Why is that? What are the areas that need help? Well, environmental review processes take too long, and the lawsuits they generate take even longer. We have a really limited understanding of what there is underground in our big cities. We have to work on worker safety, and that creates a lot of delay, a lot of cost. These projects are really complex engineering, and engineers are in really short supply. Above all else, though, public acceptance and the issue of disruption during construction is one of our biggest challenges in delivering infrastructure in a crowded city. Our biggest decarbonization challenge, of course, is buildings. And why is that? Well, one, it's the largest source, but I'm telling you, we will decarbonize transportation long before we will decarbonize buildings. Why is that? Well, buildings, every building is basically unique. They're really complex. They last a really long time. They're poorly documented because we don't actually keep very good records of what we put in each building. So each construction project, each adjustment is kind of a craft task. We run our buildings in an amateurish way with boards of directors, and I say this as a member of a buildings board of directors, who are amateurs and who do this in the evening when they have a moment, and you don't have professionals that make these decisions. And the property managers that we tend to hire, at least here in New York, are really shoestring operations. We have a really lax culture of enforcing building laws in New York City. It's the reality. And most buildings themselves in their own operations don't have a very good safety culture, which means they also don't have a very good culture of following rules, and whether those rules are about safety or those rules are about the environmental impact. Until we develop a better safety culture, we're not going to have the kind of performance that we need. Out on the street, we have a problem with our streetscape. We have done a lousy job, certainly in American cities, but it's true for many cities around the world, in allocating our shared space. And why is that? Well, unfortunately, a shocking number of people want free on-street parking. We also haven't created the infrastructure that enables people to manage their vehicles in a way that's considerate to others, and so they violate parking rules all the time. and treat it as some great injustice when we actually try to enforce them. The laws we have don't support automated enforcement, or in many cases, even allow it at all. And fundamentally, I always say this as a former member of a community board, we have empowered the wrong people to shape decisions on how we allocate public space. Renewable power is still a challenge. Of course, many of you know that we've got real challenges around the world with supply chain driving up costs. But even when the public sector is willing to pay, as we are here in New York City and New York State, for the higher costs that we have, and our Public Service Commission just demonstrated that, we still face huge challenges, frankly, with siting, with finding places for all of this. Here in New York City, no matter what we do, a lot of people who own large buildings with great rooftops, the amount of money they would make from renting that rooftop out for solar isn't worth the hassle, isn't worth the liability, isn't worth the risk, right? It's a rounding error on their building's pro formas. And when it comes to things like offshore power and transmission lines, it turns out in retrospect, and I want to credit, I see somewhere, Ben Furness, who really was the driving force behind getting the Champlain Hudson Power Express transmission line underway into New York City. But as much work as it was, I'm telling you, it's an equal amount of work to find the route to get that wire from the Hudson River into Queens, and we are having to decide whether we're going to let them go through an EJ neighborhood in the Bronx or disrupt a park for 5 years with construction. Now that's a question, right? It's not a knowledge question, it's not a data question, but it's a big question, and it's the kind of thing that gets in the way. And of course, above all else, housing is just too expensive. And fundamentally, the issue there, among other things, is that construction as an industry is just about the only industry on Earth at scale that has and had an actual decline in productivity over the last 40 years. Much of which, happily, is likely due to worker safety, which is, of course, hugely important. But there has been a complete lack of real innovation in how we build buildings. And then we wonder why housing is so much more expensive relative to everything else in the modern world than it was 25 years ago. And that is a problem of construction. But of course, even like with the renewable power, you get to the fundamental problem that rich neighborhoods don't want poor people, and poor neighborhoods don't want rich people. And it turns out that neighborhoods just don't want people. And that isn't a knowledge question. It isn't a data problem. And so, as I wrap up, I'm here, as I said, to implore you to think about how we use AI to address these thorny problems. Not to suggest that the climate modeling, the understanding of the problem, figuring out what is coming at us, those are crucially important. And, and I will say I first heard about climate change from Wally Brooker. Some of you at the Earth Institute know who that is, when I took an undergrad course. And for the professors in the room, I'm going to tell you, that generalist course that you think never is going to matter, like, I'm telling you, that mattered. I was not a science guy, but that course mattered to me. So please keep teaching those survey courses. So that kind of work is, of course, crucial, and I'm sure there are massive opportunities for AI to be brought to bear. But the more we understand the problem doesn't necessarily mean the more likely we are to be able to solve it. And that is the key thing that I hope AI and the next 25 years of AI innovation will do in a way that is smarter and better than the last 25 years of digital technology innovation. Can we focus on how we speed up engineering and design? Can we focus on how to revolutionize construction? Can we focus on how to automate and speed up environmental reviews? Can we use AI to address how decisions are made in the public sphere? Can we use AI for the difficult but necessary task of enforcing building codes and standards? How do we use AI to understand and intervene in the complex human society that is the urban environment? It will not be as easy as 140 characters. It will not be as flashy as flying cars. But if we do it right, that is actually how AI can translate into not just a greater understanding of the climate crisis, but an actual set of steps forward to solving that climate crisis. And so, it is up to you where you choose to look for your keys. The search will be easier if you stay in the light. But the more difficult search in the darkness is where you will actually find the solution. Thank you.
Thank you.